Hi and welcome to another Tea Talk. Today's talk is also in relation to relationships and love. It's the last one for now, tied into the topics that I've been discussing in the two previous recordings. So I wanted to elaborate on a few things because in the video called What to Do When Something Feels Wrong in Your Relationship, I used some examples of things that could be wrong that you might not necessarily be aware of. It's just generating a bad atmosphere or a negative feeling inside you or inside you and your partner. Sometimes it's very hard to identify what those things are, and it could be issues related to both you and your partner and how you guys interact and communicate. I will go into a few more concrete examples of things that could be going wrong in the relationship, mistakes that you or your partner could be making that aren't necessarily very easy to identify straight away, because we have a tendency to look for bigger explanations when something is not right, or even when there's a breakup, we might try and understand the breakup based on very concrete and very clear reasons. In cases where you don't really feel the same way about your partner, or you've, for whatever reason, moved on, these might not be as relevant, but they're definitely relevant for when you're going through a breakup or something is wrong and it's a confusing state and it's hard for you to understand what is going on. So there are three core things that seem to be recurring in quite a few relationships, and on a surface level you can categorize them as communication and trust and appreciation. The examples I will give you might illustrate better what these things actually mean. Let's start with the communication one. We might think that this is related to how you and your partner talk to each other when you're interacting. And to an extent it is, but it's also about all the things that are not being said. And it's a lot harder to bring that to mind because you might not have actually identified that when something is not being said, it makes you feel a certain way. For instance, if one of the parties in the relationship expect the other person to read their mind, meaning they expect them to anticipate and understand reactions and outbursts or withdrawal, different behaviors that are motivated by some emotions inside that person, but they expect you to automatically know these things. Everyone would like to be understood. Everyone would like to have a partner who can really get them. But it's everyone's responsibility to allow someone to know them and allow someone to understand them. We're all so different that to just sit back and say, understand me, is very, very unfair. So we all have the responsibility to communicate to our partners. This is how I feel. This is why I feel like that. This is what I need. This is me. And sometimes if you're in a relationship with someone who's very similar to you, that task might not be as big because you might be thinking in quite a similar way. And so there are things that don't need to be said, and that's great. That's probably the easiest. But for lots of us, we're with someone who we can't really understand. And we might think, is it because we have different genders? Or because we're from different parts of the country or different countries or different cultural groups? But regardless of the reason as to why you're different, you both have the responsibility of letting the other person know you. So instead of getting pissed off and upset or disappointed because your partner wasn't able to already anticipate what you needed, you have to explain to them what it is that you need, why you need it, and be understanding, be patient. Understand that this person, at least they're trying to get to know you. At least they're trying to make an effort. And they want to see how you function. They want to understand you. But for that to be productive, you need to open up and communicate. Not just get annoyed and then withdraw, get annoyed and reject the other person, give them a cold shoulder because they didn't understand you. No, that's not fair. So that's one key, communication that might not even be there, that should be there. The second thing I mentioned is trust. Typically, we think of trust as things related to lying, cheating, not telling the truth. It could be affairs, it could be spending money, shared money that should be kept within the relationship for investments later on. It could be not informing the other party about something that's happened that's affecting the whole relationship. But although those are the clear signs of a lack of trust, trust can also be related to whether you keep promises in everyday life. So say that your partner is expecting guests, or you both agree that you're having people over to your house, and your partner has said that they will take part in preparing for the guests to arrive, or they have said that they'll play a certain role supporting you if it's mainly your initiative. But then when it comes down to it, they don't follow through. So they, in that situation, they let you down and they leave you with the whole task. Or it can be a recurrent feeling of having planned something outside of the home, going to do something, going to see something, and then the other person last minute cancelling. That action of cancelling that appointment is not only disrespectful to your partner who's spending their precious time on doing this with you, it's also creating a lack of trust, because your partner, if you're the one cancelling last minute or not doing what you said that you would do, essentially you're creating mistrust in the relationship. You're making your partner feel like they can't really rely on you. And although it could be smaller things that to you might not seem important, that's not really up for you to define. It's not up to you. What matters is how you're leaving the other person feeling when you don't respect something that the two of you agreed upon. And if this happens again and again and again, although it's harder to pinpoint because these are smaller everyday things, they will build up. And it will cause a lack of trust, because the person who's getting disappointed might start to think, hold on, if they can't keep their word in a setting like this, then how can I rely on them when bigger things happen? Now, the last thing on that list is relating to appreciation. That one is a bit more vague, because what is really appreciation? What does it mean to show that you care for someone, or you are happy that they're around you? Now, this ties into what some psychologists speak of as languages of love. So basically, people have different ways of showing love. Some people are more into giving gifts. Some people are more into expressing things with words and saying, I love you, you look beautiful. And some are more action-orientated, so they might clean the house, but they might not necessarily explain to you, I'm cleaning the house because I love you. So this is important to keep in the back of your mind, that the way you expect to be loved is not always the way that you will be loved. And on the other side, the things that you do to show appreciation might not be the things that your partner value the most, in sense of what makes them feel loved. So it's important to keep that in the back of your mind. But either way, we should have the leniency to understand that them doing something for me, although it might not be my preferred way of expressing love, I'm still able to interpret that and see that they really care for me. However, what's dangerous is that if one party keeps doing things to show that they care for the other one, and the other one gives no response to that, this typically leads to that person trying other ways to show that, okay, I gave them a gift, they didn't really seem that interested. Okay, next time I'll try and clean the house to see if that makes them happier. Or I might just ask, what is it that makes you happy? And again, it's the responsibility of the partner to explain, I would love for you to do this and that for me. Not just say, hey, you're meant to just get it. No, tell them. Tell them what you like and appreciate. Next time, they can do that rather than waste possibly time, energy, money on something that doesn't really matter so much to you. But if again and again, one of the parties make this effort to show love in various ways, preparing meals, planning things for the two of you as a couple, giving gifts or giving compliments, or maybe all of those things. And if the recipient is not able to say that I see what you're doing and I'm really grateful for it, or I really appreciate the effort that you're making, then the other person is going to wonder if they're just doing it all in vain. Why are they spending so much time and energy trying to make the other person feel loved when there's no sign of that person actually needing or wanting that? To the point where you might even feel like you're in the way. And that's a red flag because, first of all, it can mean that you've overdone it. You've gone out of your way to please the other person, and somehow it's created some sort of disrespect, or they no longer admire you or look up to you or respect you because you're trying too hard, essentially. That's a fairly common dynamic. But either way, the person who's trying to show love in all these different ways, gradually they will build up a feeling of being unnecessary in the dynamic. Almost as if the other person would be just as happy or even happier without all those things. So this is all about creating a balance. And of course we have different needs, and some people might not need to be affirmed so much. Other people really need that in the relationship. They need those signs of love to keep that flame alive and keep that positive energy within the relationship. And they can vary from person to person, but if there's a lack of appreciation, then sooner or later that feeling of not being seen, not being necessary, not being needed is going to build up, and eventually it might be one of the bigger reasons as to why the relationship is not working, although you haven't been aware of it for a long time because it's a vague thing within the dynamic. So have a think about these different factors and see if there's anything in your relationship that might be related to one of these issues, and learn to look beyond the surface and not just look for the typical bigger things, but the smaller things that altogether create a dynamic that over time is difficult to stay within. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that was of value. Next video, I'm moving on from the relationship topic into some more slightly controversial issues, so stay tuned.